Let's go to Washington now and bring in Brent Bowman. He is Senior Director of the Center on Military and Political Power. He has served as a National Security Advisor in the U.S. Senate. Brad, it's good to have you back on the show. When you consider what all has happened this week, and when you hear what the Kurdish spokesman there just said, what's your reaction to the U.S. role in all of this?
Thank you. I think the Kurdish spokesman was being gracious. I'll be more direct. I think President Trump's decision was morally wrong and strategically short-sighted. I think, in short, it's shameful. As a patriotic American, this is an embarrassing moment for me. This is something that I think we will look back on and regret. And I think this is no way to treat our Kurdish partners. Without their help, we could not have deprived ISIS of its caliphate without sending thousands of American ground forces and all the casualties, American casualties that would have been associated with that. So this is a breaking of faith. As someone who served in the U.S. Army, I would say this is a clear breaking of faith, and I put the blame at the feet of Donald Trump.
What do you make of the report that went out today of Trump handing over the fight against Islamic State to the Turkish president?
I think that's laughable. I think if the president's goal is to reduce the demand for U.S. forces in Syria, in reality, he's doing just the opposite. President Trump has given a gift to Assad, to Putin, to Iran, and to ISIS. We already see SDF guards that are feeling pressure to move to the fight with Turkey. That means probably fewer guards at their many detention facilities where thousands of ISIS fighters are detained. So we're probably going to see more ISIS fighters on the battlefield, and which is going to contribute potentially to a regional ISIS resurgence and more terror attacks abroad. Some of these ISIS fighters may find their way through Turkey, of course, to Europe and potentially the United States. So this is an unmitigated disaster instigated by the ill-informed decision of President Donald Trump.
There are also reports today that Kurdish forces have already contacted Russia and asked for cover. I mean, this has got to be, the last thing that the United States wants in terms of foreign policy.
I would agree with you. You'd think after September 11th that Americans would understand that problems in the Middle East, there's a famous quote that isolationists in the United States like to quote from John Quincy Adams, 1821, America should not go abroad in search of monsters to destroy. The problem is here in the 21st century, as opposed to the 19th century, those monsters can and do come here and kill us. You'd think that would be a lesson that Americans would not need to be reminded of after 9/11. But this is a surefire way to have those monsters come here and get us sooner or later. This is exactly the kind of deployment we should be doing in the Middle East. A few hundred or a few thousand Americans working with tens of thousands of partners to address a shared threat. Yet that's exactly the kind of deployment, the kind of economy of force deployment that is wise that President Trump is trying to end. And I think it's a big mistake that we're going to regret, unfortunately.
Yeah, and your sentiment is shared by a lot of people in Washington. We've seen key supporters of Trump condemn the move. Here is Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. Take a listen.
So everybody is telling him this won't work, but he's doing it anyway, just like Obama. And Erdogan is not our friend, and Congress will push back. We're not giving Turkey a green light in Congress, and we're not going to abandon the Kurds. If the president does so, we won't.
All right. We've got clearly there Congress saying we've got authority, the president's got authority. We don't know what one hand is doing, what the other hand is doing. Can Trump pull things back? Can he, do a 180 here? And can we possibly even see some troops or some forces going back in to Syria? Is that possible after what has happened this week?
It would have been better if the White House had not issued the statement that they did on Sunday. It would be better that President Trump had not tweeted the, frankly, incoherent tweets that he did in the last 48 hours. I believe, though, if President Trump speaks with a clear voice to Ankara and from a position of strength and clarity, that would have some impact, but it's going to be much harder to stop something once it's already begun. I think the president, there's some talk of a meeting at the White House between Erdogan and President Trump. What a mistake that would be. How awkward would it be for President Trump to be meeting with Erdogan as Turkey is attacking the Syrian Democratic Forces who helped defeat ISIS's caliphate? I think we should also impose CAATSA sanctions for Turkey's acquisition of S-400 at this moment as well. I think a strong approach is necessary. Turkey's creating a huge additional humanitarian disaster in Syria on the poor Syrian people who've already endured so much.
And, you know, you're talking there, Brad, about a member of NATO, but Turkey is not, at the moment, is not acting like what we would expect a member of NATO to act, and Turkey appears to be doing it with the blessing of the U.S. president.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. In fact, I've written that sort of thing publicly. Yes, Turkey is a NATO member, but unlike what the president tweeted, they are not a member in good standing, at least in my view. You know, that's not a legal or technical term, but if you look at their actions, they're not acting like an ally. An ally does not purchase an air defense system from the leading threat to the alliance, Russia. An ally doesn't do that. So, you know, I was taught early on that you judge someone by their actions, and Turkey's actions are not those of a good ally right now.
Yeah, that's a good point. You have to, if you're going to talk the talk, you have to walk the walk as well. Brad Bowman in Washington tonight. Brad, as always, we appreciate your insights. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.